Hello everyone, this is Erik, the Asian movie enthusiast, and this is my review of The Tiger, a Korean drama thriller from 2015 that stars Choi Min-sik. In Japanese-occupied Korea in 1925, Chun Man-duk, a revered hunter, lives with his teenage son. He has retired his rifle, sworn off hunting, and become an herb gatherer among his cherished mountains. Now, the Japanese Governor General overseeing the occupation gathers tiger pelts as a hobby to display cultural dominance over the Korean people, and soon becomes obsessed with killing one of the last remaining tigers in Korea, an enormous one-eyed male that lives in the mountain. Now, this tiger has killed scores of hunters and evaded capture many times, and the locals, who revere it, fear that the tiger's demise will allow unchecked numbers of wolves and boars, thereby upsetting the ecological balance. So the paths of this hunter, Man-duk, and this tiger will cross, and their destinies will collide. So the film begins pretty well, dramatically. You see Choi's character walking in a snowstorm in the barren wilderness. Looks very cold, and this film is primarily set during the winter months. We see some of his home life. He's hanging around with his son. His wife is making do with the low amount of food in the house, so they're not exactly well off. And for the purposes of providing for his family, he decides to hunt down some tigers in the woods. Now the story then cuts to a handful of years later, and the Japanese actor, Ren Osuji, of all people, is in this large fancy room with stuffed animals everywhere. And he's, a part of the Japanese occupation of Korea. And he berates the soldier in front of him for failing to kill this tiger, this super tiger that's been causing problems recently, the one-eyed tiger. And, so there's this subplot, or I guess theme, of occupation, the Japanese occupation of Korea, that's kind of hanging over the film. And that situation escalates conflicts in the film. So Choi Min-sik's character gets heavily recruited by the Japanese who are trying to kill this tiger and some Korean hunters who are also trying to kill it for their own reasons. So story-wise, there's quite a bit of time that's spent with our main character and his son. Now the kid wants to live his own life and do his own thing, and he kind of has a point, because our main character is a bit too protective of him, and that father-son relationship has a nice arc to it throughout the film. The other area of focus is the relationship between our main character and the tiger itself. And they cross paths a number of times throughout the film. And that element is what makes this movie pretty memorable and different from a lot of other films. This tiger has its own backstory that gets developed little by little throughout the film. The way he treats humans can be a little bit different depending on the situation and the human. So there's nuance to this and complexity. And the main conflict here becomes multidimensional, a lot more than you might expect going into the film. And the stories of some of the different characters kind of mirror one another as the film progresses. So it's actually a really interesting story. And it works so well that I actually did feel an emotional impact by the end of the film. So it's pretty good quality stuff. Everyone knows who Choi Min-sik is at this point. And yeah, he gives another impressive performance here. You may recognize another Korean actor, however, Choi Man-sik. He plays one of those Korean hunters in this film who has a scar on his face. Very good performance. And this actor has been around for a long time. I mean, at least 15 years at this point. I became a fan of his, actually, about a decade ago when I saw the Korean drama The King Two Hearts. I really liked his character in that. He's mostly relegated to secondary roles in films, but he always adds to the films that he's in. If I ever did a list of favorite supporting actors from Korea, this guy would make the list. I always like seeing him and stuff. The natural environments in this film are nicely captured. Mostly takes place in the winter, like I said. The tiger effects, the UCG in this, they're pretty convincing, especially for a Korean film. I mean, they're not perfect, but they're definitely good enough so that you could suspend your disbelief. And the attack sequences involving the tiger are pretty effective in this, so that's good. Camera work is pretty dynamic at times. I really like the tracking shots in the woods where the camera goes through, gives you a sense of speed and movement when the tiger is running. And then there are, like I said, some intense attack scenes as well. The runtime is over 2 hours, a little bit on the long side, but again, with a story this good, not a major problem. Not a major problem. Now, some people might be shocked to know that this was directed by Park Hoon-jung, the same man who gave us Night in Paradise, The Witch, VIP, and New World. So this is like one of his films that's a little bit different from some of his other stuff. But I would say that this is probably his most heartfelt film of his entire filmography. You know what I mean? Some people might think, after watching his recent stuff, he's maybe more of a cynical director, you know what I mean? But this film has a heart to it, and it provides a nice counterpoint if you're going through his filmography. So, again, this film shows this director has some range, and it's definitely worth checking out, especially if you're into this guy. So The Tiger is a very good film, currently available on YouTube for rent and physical media. And as always, we'll see you next time.